It now gives me great pleasure in just one moment to call on the rabbi who calls this place home. What an honour to pastor or rabbi to this incredible, historical, beautiful synagogue. So Rabbi David Lutnik, who aside from being the rabbi of the shul, you know, is one of the foremost respected army chaplains. So thank you for hosting us, Rabbi Lutnik. With the rabbi, I'm shortly going to ask Deborah Harding Morris to also come up and do an acknowledgement to our great country. Deborah was at the Never Again Is Now rally and stirred the 12,000 or so whoever was there with an incredible acknowledgement from her Corinduk ancestry and this great spirit of unity that she has. And so on that note, we'll do the acknowledgement, and then we can all, those who can, we'll start with we'll do the Australian anthem. So Deborah, you're out.
Good morning. I just want to introduce myself. I've got this because I get nervous and then I forget what I'm I'm Deborah Harding Morris. My family is, my tribe is Tongarong. My clan is Yuwang Ilam Alak. It's hard to say. And my family survived. My grandmother was born on a mission at Corinduk in Hillsville. But our land is actually Mansfield region, which is central Highlands. And I'm here today because of Corinduk, and I'm really thankful for it. I want to thank Rabbi David for allowing me to do this acknowledgement, and I want to start by acknowledging our Creator, because this is His land. He is the God of Israel. He is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and He's a wonderful God. And this is a wonderful land that He's given us. I want to acknowledge our ancestors who have walked on this land before us, and all the people who have come here as well and walked on this land with them in the past and joined the journey on this land, because the land, it's been a journey. I want to acknowledge the unity at Corinduk. Our ancestors stood in unity. Like Steve said, there were 5 tribes, and they were called the Kulin Nation, and they governed together, and they were willing to live in unity with the white people, but sadly it just couldn't happen then, but it's happening now. And so I want to acknowledge that they sowed seeds of unity into this land. And I want to acknowledge that William Cooper and the Aboriginal Advancement League watered those seeds. And so I'd also like to acknowledge First Nation people that are here, Alice and anyone else who's First Nation from this land. But I also want to acknowledge the first of the First Nation, and that's all you Jewish people. You're the first of the First Nation, and we acknowledge that as the First Nation people on this land. And I especially too want to acknowledge in the Jewish people the 8,000 Holocaust survivors that came here, and they trusted that they would find safe refuge in this land, and they did, and they still will. And so I want to declare that from here, and I really thank them for what they sowed into this land. And I also want to acknowledge all who have come to walk with us in this land. We've all been called here. We've all been brought here, and I see the land like Joseph's coat. This is a Joseph land. It's a land of many colours, many people that God has brought here. And so all our lives are being sown into this land. And I just want to say that a land fashions people. It fashions us. And so I want to call forth the unity that's been planted in this land. I want to call it forth to now. And I want to acknowledge that every person here you're part of the journey of this unity. And I want to thank you and acknowledge that, you know, we're all part of the Creator's story on this land. And I want to say Wurundjeri, which is my language. Welcome. Thank you.
Those that can be upstanding, big crowd of
Let us rejoice, for we are young and free. With goodness, soil and wealth, our reserve I see. Our land abounds in nature's gift of beauty, rich and rare.
Thank you.
I was asked to share a word about the history of this synagogue, but in honour of all of you that have gathered here today, I'd like to actually share a word about this part of Melbourne. On a hill in East Melbourne was the ecumenical or faith precinct. And if you look outside, you would see the Catholic Archdiocese building. You'd see St. Peter's Eastern Hill. You'd see a lovely Lutheran church, a little bit in that direction. There used to be a Baptist house of worship, I believe, right next door. And on this side, the Salvation Army printing works. And there are more. There are more. And amidst that all, the Eastern Hill Fire Station. Because the highest point in town needs two things. People of morals, of dignity, people that will show the way, and some good folk that are looking out for fires and can put them out. I find that a bit of a metaphor as well sometimes. And so I think from this part of a raised, elevated part physically, metaphorically, an elevated part of Melbourne, we can shine out the rest of Melbourne and eventually Victoria and eventually Australia of what it means to live in harmony. If you read the history of this synagogue, you'll see that on Kol Nidre night, the holiest night of the year, we had the vicars, the priests, the pastors from the neighbouring places of worship coming in to partake in the service. And that was reciprocated. And we still get along well, right? Sometimes we complain about our respective congregations and the plight that we have, but generally, I actually mentioned that maybe we should build a bridge across the road so we can visit each other more easily. And thank you for your suggestion, which was, we are. That's exactly what we're doing today. We're sharing a commonality that we have, a common faith, a common history, and we're also sharing a common humanity. I think this is a very beautiful time. Thank you for those words of introduction and welcome. They were very powerful. I don't think I've experienced quite a welcome that bridged faith and religion and our history into the first people story as well. So thank you for that. I don't have a lot more to share. I think today will speak largely for itself and the gathering that we have together. I do have a little prayer that I've prepared. It's not a classical Jewish prayer at all. It's not one taken directly from our liturgy. It just cites 4 or 5 verses from the Tanakh. And I hope that that can kind of be a good starting point for the discussion. If you'd like, you can stand up. You don't
Our merciful Father who dwells on high, bless our country of Australia, its leaders, and all her people. A quote from Jeremiah chapter 22. Dirshu et shalom ha'ir asher igleti eschem. May your spirit vitalize this great land. Seek its peace. May the spirit of this land enter the heart. May the Lord's Spirit enter the hearts of our government, and members of parliament, their advisors, their officers. Instill within them wisdom and compassion and integrity. Protect the members of the Australian Defence Force and all of our protective and emergency service providers and all of those that are in service to the community. I think of the hospital precinct of this area as well, and how 24/7 there are those looking after our most vulnerable. Bring honour and fulfilment to our nation's first inhabitants and our forebears. Of course, we acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, which this synagogue is on. V'nosata sholom ba'aretz simchas olam liyoshveha. This is a quote from our liturgy. May an abiding peace come to our holy land, Israel, an everlasting joy for all her inhabitants. Protect her defenders, bless her leaders with wise counsel. V'yikayim mikra shekasuv, and fulfill the words of Isaiah chapter 35. Ufduya Hashem yeshuvun uvod tzion berina v'simchas olam arosha. Remember and hastily return those held in captivity, in fulfillment of the verse of Isaiah. The captives shall return and come with dancing to Zion, crowned with joy everlasting. They shall attain joy and gladness while sorrow and sighing flee. Finally, a quote from Psalms chapter 90. Teach us to count our days rightly, that we may obtain a wise heart, that we may work together and live together in harmony for the well-being of this society that we are building together. And finally, Isaiah chapter 2. Until the day of ultimate peace and redemption arrives, where they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not take up sword against nation. They shall never again know war, and peace will reside in our world and in our hearts. Amen.
Amen.
I introduce Nigel Giovanni, who is together with Leora, one of our esteemed congregants here at this shore. He will share a perspective of a typical Australian Jew, which is what he is.
Thank you. My name is Nigel Giovanni, and I'm a proud Jew. I'm a Zionist who believes in the right of the Jewish people to live peacefully in their homeland. These words proudly reflect my identity, but can no longer be uttered safely in parts of Melbourne. On October 7, 2023, Hamas launched a genocidal war in Israel, terrorizing, massacring, and raping innocent civilians. Jews, Christians, Arabs, and Druze were all victims of this attack. Then, on October 8th, the first of weekly protests around Australia started violently outside the Sydney Opera House, before Israel even stepped foot in Gaza to bring home the hostages and dismantle the tunnels that hid terrorists. We all know that at the Opera House, they were not chanting, "Find the Jews." They were chanting, "Don't worry, rabbis," I won't say that. We witnessed a community leader in Lakemba, New South Wales, screaming that it was a day of victory. The slaughter of Jews for him was a day to be elated and a day of pride. And from that day, the virus of anti-Semitism has spread at epidemic proportions across this country. We continue to see the flag waving of a listed terrorist organisation on the streets of all our major cities for over a year without consequences. Families are now harassed as they dare to find joy by visiting the Christmas windows. The Jewish community in Melbourne lives with a burden that should not exist in our multicultural society. Our synagogues require security on the Sabbath, a day meant for peace and reflection. One synagogue was recently threatened and required evacuation, and of course last night we saw a synagogue firebombed. Aged care facilities and childcare centres require around-the-clock security. Our schools are fortresses, surrounded by ramp-proof bollards, blast-proof glass, and armed security trained in anti-terrorist response procedures. Anti-Semitism is never just about the Jews. It is a warning bell, a crack in the foundation of humanity that signals the rot of intolerance and injustice. The silent majority must find its voice.
That's right.
We must move from passivity to purpose, from spectators to defenders of what is right. Staying silent in the face of growing hatred is not just dangerous for the Jewish community, it is dangerous for all Australians. Hatred and intolerance, once unleashed, spreads like a virus, consuming everything in its path. We must not wait until it reaches our doorsteps to act. While we gather here today in a place of worship, sadly we know we cannot only pray for change, we must be that change. This is the time for the silent majority to speak up. When we see injustice and hear hatred, we must respond. When we witness discrimination against any community, Jewish, Muslim, Christian or secular, we must stand up and say, not here, not now, not ever. When faced with uncertainty, we tend to believe that an individual can do nothing, but history tells us otherwise. This is why we are celebrating William Cooper's legacy and bravery today. The Jewish community around Australia and the world reveres his bravery. We will never forget that William Cooper was the man who stood up when millions were silent. The bonds between Jewish and Indigenous peoples in Australia run deep. From the battlefields of Beersheba to the struggle for land rights, we have stood together, understanding each other's connection to ancestral lands. William Cooper reminds us that the arc of history does not bend towards justice alone. It must be pulled, pushed, and guided by people of conscience. He knew that silence is not neutrality, it is complicity. He understood that the fight for justice is not a burden that we bear, but a privilege to be embraced. To those who have gathered here today, our First Nations people, our community leaders, our friends, your presence gives us strength and hope. For a year we have been assured that there is a silent majority. Today we are privileged to see the faces and hear the voices of those who have chosen not to stay silent and are willing to take action. And for this we're tremendously grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nigel. It's an honour to have senior representatives from some of the major Christian denominations with us today. To humorise it, one can say, three pastors walk into a shul. But it's more serious than that. And the common Judeo-Christian values and principles by which we all live by are more important than ever to focus on, especially when our religious freedoms are violated and we feel threatened by them. So coming together in solidarity and support of each other in a Jewish synagogue on this day, the 6th of December, to commemorate one of the best examples of a bystander, an upstander, is just so super appropriate. I'm going to invite our three faith leaders to come up together, because I think there's safety in numbers and power in numbers. But it does give me great pleasure to first of all introduce a friend, a mate, Pastor Doug Stevenson, who has been the senior pastor of the largest Baptist church in Australia for the past 17 years. They have 8 campuses across Melbourne and Sydney, representing up to 15,000 people. So Dale Stevenson ministers across Australia and around the world at the Crossway Baptist Church. He's married to Edie and they have 4 married children. Pastor Dale will come up in a second. I'd also like to welcome Father Michael Bowie, who is representing the Anglican Diocese of Melbourne and has been appointed by Archbishop Philip Pryor to come and stand with us here today. He's the vicar of the nearby St Peter's East Hill Parish, friendly neighbours. It was the original Anglican parish of the city, and St Peter's has a long history of expressing Christian faith in outward-looking social concern and advocating for justice in our society. It's an honour to have a representative of the Anglican Church to share a message here today. Once Father Michael has shared his message, I'm going to also invite Pastor Tim Hall to share with us today, or to hobble up, if he possibly can. Pastor Tim is a well-known and loved Australian evangelist representing the Pentecostal movement. He's been preaching to great crowds of people for 50 years, regularly attends the Planet Shakers Church, which is one of the largest Pentecostal churches in Victoria, has a deep admiration for Indigenous Australians and the Jewish people. Tim also sits on the board of ICEJ, the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem, also represented here in Australia. So, gentlemen, as and when you can, please come forward and share with us. New knee. Might wait for a blessing for a new knee.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for that warm welcome. Baruch Hashem, rabbis, and God bless you to all who are gathered here today. Today for me is a significant day because it brings together kind of some mutual loves and respect. Certainly the Indigenous community. God bless you. It's great to be standing with you on this day in remembrance of what William Cooper did back in 1938. And also to stand with the Jewish community. Such an important time for people to stand with the Jewish community here in Australia. My wife and I spent the first year of our married life living in Israel, first 13 months actually, and we've carried a heartfelt affection for the Jewish people from before that time, and certainly for the near 40 years of our married lives. While I'm a Baptist pastor, I actually stand here in front of you as a follower of Jesus more broadly, and as an Australian. It's such an important moment for Australians to find their voice, and certainly for Christians to find their voice, and to say that anti-Semitism is an evil in our society. It's like a cancer in our society that should not be tolerated. I am quite a clear, ardent spokesperson for freedom of speech, but not of the promotion of hatred. I live very comfortably with diverse ideas, faith, ideologies, and the like. I think it actually makes for a robust society. But I have no tolerance for evil, and anti-Semitism is evil. Certainly from a Christian faith perspective, Jesus said, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Someone once said to Jesus, what's the most important command? He says, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. He said, the second is like it. You shall love your neighbour as yourself. And so it's very important for me, and at this season in Australia's history, to stand as a follower of Jesus and to say we stand with the Jewish community, we love you, we respect you, we stand with you. God bless you.
Amen.
My name is Michael Bowie. As already been mentioned, I'm the vicar of St Peter's Eastern Hill across the road, the original Anglican parish church of the city, and I am honoured to walk with you today, representing our Archbishop Freya and the Anglican Christians of this diocese. William Cooper, even as he was ignored by our government, shamed us with his moral clarity and expression of solidarity with our Jewish brothers and sisters in 1938. May he inspire us today to learn and embody such empathy, an empathy that he did not have to be taught. As Christians, we celebrate the empathy of God with humankind in our upcoming Christian Christmas festival. May we show the same courage and empathy in our rejection of anti-Semitism, and all forms of racial hatred and violence in this and every society. We acknowledge our shared heritage with our Jewish brothers and sisters, as with our First Nations brothers and sisters. May we join them in seeking to build a harmonious and cohesive society, in which our First Nation brothers and sisters are acknowledged with the generosity they have so often shown to us, even as we have disregarded them. May we humbly learn from our First Nation sisters and brothers and our Jewish sisters and brothers to honour all God's children as truly beloved kindred. And may we work tirelessly to end the scandal of racial and religious hatred and division in all our communities.
Amen.
It's a great honour to be here. I'm just going to move this. I might need it in a minute. Good on your knee. Never give an evangelist a microphone, it's deadly. Very honoured to be here. I have a passion for Israel. I also have a passion for our Indigenous people. I preach. In fact, I've got conferences out there, and I'll be in Jerusalem in February, first week. I was going back as a young man, and I was standing, and I don't go to them now, but I was standing in a bar. I'd been working, pay carding, contract, and I was tired. We had a long day, and I was at the bar, so just distant memories now. But the door opened, and a man walked in, and as he walked in, people turned, and I was aware that it was a man of significance that walked in. As he walked in, I could see that he was an Indigenous man. I had very little to do with Indigenous people, didn't know much, hadn't met any really, and had a good chat. As he walked in, people embraced him. And he came over to the bar with a big cheeky smile on his face and a glint in his eye, and threw a bag of ducks down and told us how wonderful they were going to taste, considering we're not allowed to shoot ducks out of season, but he could shoot them all year round. They said, would you like to meet him? I said, I'd love to. We shook hands with him. As I shook hands with him, he said to me, what's your name? I said, it's Tim. He said, same name as me. It's a good name. The man was Tim Hughes. Tim Hughes, you may never have heard the name, but Tim Hughes fought incredibly in World War II. Tim Hughes fought in Tobruk, in some of the hottest parts of the war. And while he was over there at Buna and Gona, he fought amazingly and received the military medal. He came back and he couldn't believe how he'd been treated as a brother all that time with these guys so close. He came back and got abused and called every manner of name and treated as someone less than a citizen. He went on, was given the OBE, became a soldier settler. I'm thinking of many of the great Australians, Aboriginal, Island people. 21 years before William Cooper's courageous stand, 800 Australian horsemen lined up, ready to charge into Beersheba. My great uncle was second in command of the charge, received the Distinguished Service Order, and then led the 4th Light Horse in the taking of Damascus in a full frontal charge where the entire garrison had been taken, and received the 2nd DSO and came back as Major General George James Rankin. Something in my love for Israel has been intensified because I feel that our family have had a significant part in Israel becoming a nation again. But what I found out was that among those magnificent light horsemen, 118 of them, of the regiments, were Indigenous, and some of the greatest horsemen. As we look at the wars, I'm really going to get quick here now. 70 Indigenous fought the Boer War, 500 before being acknowledged as people, but simply being included as flora and fauna, went to the front, 500, and many died. And in the Second World War, over 3,000 Indigenous people lined up to go into the war. We're celebrating William Cooper today, a great man who took a great stand. But I would like to say my love for Israel, but also to say how much I value, and we should value, the commitment to our nation of the incredible Indigenous people who have fought and stood strong, just like William Cooper. And we acknowledge him today for his great stand, but I'd like to acknowledge all Indigenous people who have laid their life down and taken a stand for our nation. God bless you.
Thank you very much. We're going to have to take a little break in proceedings. Those that were at the Never Again Is Now rally that took place down the road will have heard Pastor Dale say a few words in a different language to what was expected. Pastor Dale, do you want to come up and stand with me? Those words are so beautiful, and do you want to share them again today?
Yeah. Hirma tobu manayim sheretachim gam yachad.
For those that have never heard those words before and have the little song sheets, we want to teach you the meaning of those words and maybe a little tune so that you can have this with you in your mind and in your voice going forward. Do you want to get everyone to repeat the words to you?
Sure. It's Psalm 133, verse 1. Oh, they're good. Yeah, please this one, brothers. Hine mato, umanayim, shevet, achim, yam yachad.
And there's a little tune that we discovered Pastor Dale also knows the tune to. So when you're ready, sing along with us and enjoy. That's the intro. This incredible story and legacy of William Cooper takes a turn now at this event, and it takes a diplomatic turn as we introduce Michael Pearce, the Honorary Consul General for Germany right here in Victoria. Michael has been a vital part of this legacy and was part of the 2012 commemorations when he received from Uncle Boydie, William Cooper's grandson, a copy of the exact resolution of the petition from the 6th of December 1938. When I asked Michael what he did with that petition, he answered very diplomatically, stating that he could tell me, but then he'd have to dispose of me. So it's not so diplomatic. In truth, he sent it on to the German embassy in Canberra, who then sent it on to the Foreign Office in Berlin. I wonder today if it is available for public viewing for any Australians that go to Germany. I'd be really interested to hear. Perhaps Michael can share with us. But to give us some insights into this incredible shared history of the two nations of Australia and Germany, please welcome Michael.
Rabbi Gutnick, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the invitation to participate in today's event. It's 12 years today since I stood outside 419 Collins Street in the city, the site of the German consulate in 1938. Before long, Uncle Boydie, the grandson of William Cooper, appeared at the head of a large delegation. He approached and presented me with a replica of the resolution of the Australian Aborigines League from 1938, which had condemned the Nazi atrocities against the Jews of Germany and Austria in what is known as Kristallnacht. As is well known, the German consul in 1938 refused to receive William Cooper's delegation or its message. Although I was not kept waiting very long in Collins Street on that day in 2012, the day itself was a long time coming, 74 years to be exact. But finally, William Cooper's message from 1938 was received by the German consulate. I in turn transmitted the message to the German embassy in Canberra, which transmitted it to the German Foreign Office in Berlin. A few years later, in 2017, Uncle Boyd travelled to Germany and had the opportunity to present the message himself in Berlin to Dr. Felix Klein, the German Government Commissioner for Jewish Life and the fight against anti-Semitism. Yet on this day in 2020, Dr. Klein made a formal apology on behalf of the German government for the German consul's refusal in 1938 to receive the resolution. Right about now in Canberra, the Israeli and German ambassadors are opening a memorial to William Cooper on their shared boundary. I think it is fair to say that William Cooper's message from 1938 has reverberated down through the years, all the way to today, when we gather to recall it once more. And I cannot think of a time, certainly since 2012, when the message was more important or more urgent. More than anything, it is the universal humanity of William Cooper's message which makes it so important today. It is a message for everyone, for Jew and Gentile, for Arab and Israeli, for blackfella and whitefella. In 1938, a people shunned and marked for extinction in their own land were moved to protest against the oppression of another people on the other side of the world. While others, more powerful and more fortunate than them, governments, churches, corporations, everyone, did nothing. In 1938, William Cooper's voice was a lone voice until it was too late, and the atrocities of Kristallnacht were overtaken by even greater horrors. We cannot afford to ignore William Cooper's voice and his message any more today than in 1938. I know by your presence here today that you are determined to ensure that William Cooper's message is not ignored. It is vital that you succeed in that, and I wish you all the strength and courage which that undertaking will require.
Esteemed visitors arrive to a destination, we sing a beautiful welcome song. I'm going to put Dave on the spot here and see if we can work with me here to offer us our welcome song to our special guest here today. Shalom Aleichem.
Sounds good.
Peace and peace up to you. the three of you, and then come up as you'd like to, and please share with us. We're thrilled today to have Michael McDonough, who is a direct descendant and a great-great-grandson of William Cooper. Anyone, as I was, who was at the memorial service at Monash University would have heard Michael receive a standing ovation in that packed Robert Blackwood Hall for his message of love, peace and kindness. Michael is a voting member of the local land council in his home near Liverpool, just out of Sydney in New South Wales. Straight after Michael, another true legend will share with us, Nova Peris OAM, and a few other letters I think after your name. An entire alphabet. And there are so many accolades that we can highlight about Nova as a great sporting icon, a political activist and former senator, a proud Indigenous woman, but probably most appropriate today, Nova, is your belief as being an upstander and trying to fix parts of our broken world. Nova has such a strong social justice ethic, and we are just so proud and grateful for the path that you've taken. Nova was in the Great Synagogue in Sydney on Wednesday night that was essentially locked down as well. Nova, I hope you've mentioned your Tikkun Olam Foundation that you've set up, and give us the opportunity to hear about it and see how we can support that in our own way. Side by side with Michael and Nova, I'm delighted to introduce Uncle Ray Finn. This man has a direct link with one of Australia's most significant battles, which actually turned out to be the very last cavalry charge in history. I'm talking about that famous Battle of Beersheba that shaped history by turning World War I on its head, giving victory to the British, penning the Balfour Declaration, and ultimately bringing about the formal declaration of the State of Israel in 1948. That battle was the 31st of October 1917, which a few speakers have mentioned here today. Ray is from a proud South Australian family whose grandfather, Jack Ludgate, served with a group of Aboriginal reinforcements. Ray was in Israel on horseback, riding and reenacting that charge on the 31st of October 2017. And as Ray may share with us, he has endured the odd battle himself since that Battle of Beersheba, as you strongly stand for what is just and true. So please put your hands together and welcome these three fine.
Shalom. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are here on the sacred lands of the Bunurong Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nation, and I honour their ancestors' deep connection to this land and the culture that they have preserved for thousands of generations. I also pay my respect to the elders, past and present, who carry the responsibility of passing on this knowledge, which the future generations will inherit it. I'd also like to acknowledge my Indigenous fellow brothers and sisters who are all here today, and to everyone here, we all believe that one red blood. In 1938, the world turned a blind eye to the horrors unfolding in Nazi Germany. On Christmas night, the night of broken glass, Jewish homes, businesses and synagogues were destroyed. It was a night of horror, persecution and violence, marking a dark chapter in human history. But far from the streets of Berlin, the 77-year-old Yorta man named William Cooper, whose own people were denied basic human rights in his own country, chose to act. Here in Melbourne, this remarkable Aboriginal elder led a delegation to the German consulate to protest the Nazi atrocities. In doing so, William Cooper stood up, not just for the Jewish people, but for all of humanity. Today I stand before you not only as an Aboriginal woman, but as someone who has over the past year stood in unwavering solidarity with the Jewish people. This year I travelled to Israel and I bore witness to the horrors inflicted upon the Jewish people, both in history and in the present day. On October 7, 2023, the largest massacre of Jewish people since the Holocaust unfolded before the world's eyes. Innocents' lives were taken, families torn apart, and hatred reared its head once more, in a stark reminder that anti-Semitism has not disappeared. William Cooper's actions resonate deeply with me because, like him, I understand the weight of injustice and the pain of persecution. Us Aboriginal people have lived through dispossession, forced assimilation, and attempts to erase our culture and identity, just like you. We know what it means to have our humanity denied, to have to fight for recognition, and to endure against impossible odds. Yet, like William Cooper, we also understand the power of solidarity. When he marched to the German continent in 1938, he did not march for his own people. He marched for the Jewish people, strangers to him, but bound to him by a shared understanding of suffering and a belief in justice. He knew, as we must, that the fight against hate anywhere is a fight against hate everywhere. As I reflect on his legacy, I see deep parallels between Aboriginal and Jewish peoples. Both of us have endured systemic oppression and attempts to erase our histories, and yet both of us have survived, stronger, prouder, and more determined to ensure that these injustices are never forgotten. William Cooper's protest against Crystal Night was an extraordinary act of courage. His petition condemned not just the destruction of synagogues and Jewish property, but the dehumanisation of a people. It was an act of moral clarity, empathy, and profound humanity. This is a lesson we must all carry today. It reminds us that silence in the face of injustice is never an option. It compels us to act, to speak, and to bear witness, just as Cooper did. In my time standing alongside the Jewish people, I have seen their pain, your pain. I have cried with you all. But I've also seen your resilience, your determination to protect your people, and the unwavering commitment to preserve your history. Their fight is one that we must all take up. There was a Jewish principle called Tukon Olam, which means repairing the world. It calls on us to heal the brokenness around us, to bring justice into dark places. William Cooper embodied this principle when he protested against Crystal Night. He saw the brokenness of the world and he took it upon himself to act, not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. As Aboriginal people, we share this responsibility. Our connection to the land, to community, and to the sacredness of all things that teach us that we are all caretakers of the world and of each other. Like Cooper, we know that the fight for justice is never done. It is a lifetime commitment to mending what has been broken. The Jewish community has not forgotten William Cooper's extraordinary gesture, and I witnessed this as I honoured him at Yad Vashem, at the Holocaust Memorial in Israel. And there's also a garden which is dedicated to his memory. But perhaps more importantly, Jewish people have carried forward his legacy by standing with Aboriginal people in all of our struggles. From the 1965 Freedom Ride to helping establish the Victorian Aboriginal Legal Service and the countless litigation that Jewish people have won for my people. Your solidarity has been steadfast, and I'll never forget that. This is the power of true allyship. William Cooper's action in 1938 were not just a process, they're a lesson for all humanity, a reminder that justice knows no borders, that we are stronger when we stand together, and that silence in the face of hate is complicity. As we gather here in Melbourne, the city where Cooper made his historic stance, let us honour his legacy by continuing his work. Let us challenge hate wherever it exists, whether it is anti-Semitism, racism, or any form of bigotry. Let us remember that the fight for justice is not a one-way street. It is a partnership that requires courage, compassion, and unwavering solidarity. Both Tukon Olam and our Aboriginal values remind us that the work of repairing the world is ongoing. It is shared responsibility to carry forward Cooper's legacy, to stand against hate and foster understanding and build a future rooted in justice and respect. William Cooper's life teaches us that one person, guided by empathy and a deep sense of justice, can indeed change the world. His legacy is our legacy, and it is up to all of us to ensure that it lives on. As Talamak Rabbi Tafan said, one is not obligated to complete the work, but neither is one free to abandon it. Shukran Rabbi, Amir Rahai.
We're happy to be here this afternoon. I don't have to tell you how tough it is today, how hard and dangerous it is to freely express your religion, your culture, and your beliefs in public. I grew up experiencing and knowing discrimination everywhere. I looked and turned just like William Cooper. I knew violence, I knew persecution. I, like so many people, just had the colour of my skin bear witness against me from some white person's prejudice. What you and your generation are now experiencing is something that never has happened in history before on such a wide scale. So many evil ways. Now the discrimination is against you. It is protested in the streets, shouted from corners, shared everywhere online, and yelled in your faces when you get on a tram. There is none of us blackfellas ever had. The world has been changing for Indigenous people, where for some reason the very people that are discriminating against the Jewish people are the ones that are respecting us Indigenous people. Me and my brothers and sisters and family, friends and extended Indigenous communities are not accepting this. Why? Because we as Indigenous people stick together with other Indigenous people, groups, tribes across the nations and around the globe. From the Maoris in New Zealand, to us in Australia, to the Native Americans, Indians, to Papua New Guineans, and also to the Pacific Islanders, who stand shoulder to shoulder with their Jewish brothers. You see, we're willing to tell all those who are mixed up, bigoted, angry, anti-Israel, anti-Jewish mobs, that they can't stand with us, black people. They can't use our flags. We cannot say how much they love us on one hand, and be so the anti-Israel on the other hand.
Amen.
We are telling them worldwide that the Jewish people are as Indigenous as we are. We are telling them worldwide that Jewish people are as Indigenous as we are. The Palestinians are not now and never have been Indigenous to Israel. Palestinians are not now forever being Indigenous to Israel. It's not them, it's all of you. Do not trust a man without a history. Do not trust a nation or a country without a history. When the dust and the smoke settles, it's only you, the Jewish people, the true Indigenous people of that land, who will stand forever upon your own land. Thank you.
brothers and sisters, my aunties and uncles, peace be on you, peace be with you always. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge traditional custodians of country, pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging, your knowledge, and pay respects to my brother and sister here, who have given me the strength to stand here before you, not just my ancestors. So thank you, Mona. Thank you. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank my mother and pay homage to my mother and to all the mothers. Without you, we don't exist. Because of you, I am. So thank you to all the mothers. I'm not forgetting you either, fathers, but this is about the mothers at the moment. The night of the 9th and 10th of November 1930. It was a night of horror for the Jewish community and their citizens of Berlin and Germany. It was a night of terror and fears. It was a night of mass murder and the night of racism, a night of destruction and dispossession, a night of fires and destroyed synagogues and shops and businesses. It left broken glass all over the streets. It was a dark night. It was Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. Back in Australia, on the 11th of November, the main newspaper of the day in the city of Melbourne had pictures and an article that had described in detail the horrors that were perpetrated by the Nazi sympathisers in the city of Berlin and Germany on the 9th and the 10th. After reading that issue of the paper and seeing those images in that article, it must have reminded him of the loss and the horrors which his family and his people had suffered and continue to suffer in 1938. He had struggled and fought so hard from the 1880s to the late 1930s to save his own people, trying to inform the white government of Australia about the desperate and dire situation that his people were forced to endure. He was a decent man and a decent human being, who despite all he was forced to endure throughout his life was someone who always knew right from wrong. The treatment of the Jewish people of Berlin and Germany by the Nazi government was wrong and a cruel persecution of the innocent. Despite losing a son in the First World War, Private Daniel Cooper, aged 21 years, my great-uncle, killed in action on the 20th of the 10th, 1970, and is buried at Ypres in Belgium. Despite losing his son, for a country that did not totally recognise him or his family's contribution and their sacrifice, and until he died, he was unable to leave the country to visit his son's last resting place. Uncle William Cooper, my great-great-grandfather, at the age of 77, 78 years old, decided to lead by example and make a stand. He waited for the people of Australia and the world to protest against Kristallnacht, but no one did, as far as he could see. So after 2 weeks, he decided to organise a letter of protest, which he would personally deliver to the German consul in the city of Melbourne, Australia. A protest letter on behalf of the First Nations people of Australia against the terrible treatment and cruel persecution of the Jewish citizens of Berlin and Germany by the Nazi government of Germany. We demand it must stop now. That's what the letter said. Not, oh, can you stop please? We demand it stop. A truly brave act. With his courage and his spirit, in a suit and tie, he would somehow summon the energy of some family and some colleagues and a few loyal supporters. On December the 6th, 1938, they all walked 7.1 kilometres. Very hot day, a very hot day, apparently 35, 36 degrees. So in a suit and tie, you can just imagine how hot it was. From his home in Footscray all the way to the German consulate that was located in Collins Street. Staff and security at the consulate refused to accept the letter of protest, so it was left doorstep, or maybe slipped under the door. We don't know. They didn't document it, so we don't know. But we know it was delivered. After walking in the shoes and representing my ancestor for the last 14 years, with the help from my dear friend and Jewish brother Abe Schwartz, and others from the Jewish community, I have been very fortunate to have rediscovered my ancestry. I now have a deeper understanding and appreciation of their lives, which for me has been very spiritual and at times quite miraculous. For me, 2023 was a year of great highs and lows. I will never forget the 7th of October. I will never forget the 14th of October. They're dates now that are etched in my mind for the rest of my life. My mum, Auntie Barbara and I got to march for the first time for Uncle Dan in the Anzac Day March on country for the first time at Barma. We travelled more than 700 kilometres to be part of the march. It was a great honour and a very special moment for both Mum and I. No one had ever marched for Uncle Dan. We didn't even know that he was killed in the First World War. We only recently found out. It is an absolute pleasure and a joy for me to be here today. What a wonderful privilege it is for me to represent my mother, the family, and my great-great-grandfather, Uncle William Cooper. We all really appreciate the recognition that the Jewish community has given to our ancestor and his efforts in standing up for human rights. It truly is a great thing to honour such a fine Aboriginal elder now and in the future. In 2024, I am a man who is incorruptible in mind and spirit. I am now guided by a strong moral compass, with the support of the great spirits. The divine love that my Creator has for me makes me grateful and gives me the strength to endure my own chronic pain and sufferings. To each and every one of you that are here today, thank you for your time and thank you for your attention. I would also like to thank you all for your love and respect. It gives me, my brothers and sisters, a lot of peace and comfort. To everyone who's involved in organising this event and all events here in Melbourne, thank you all so very much. Big hugs to you all. Big hugs. In closing, as you all have travelled here safely, please, everyone, travel back home safely. Always stand strong, always stand up and be proud, and always stand united. I am my brother's keeper. I am my sister's keeper. B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, Israel.
That brings to an end the formal speeches of this event. We will soon stand and sing the Israeli national anthem, Hatikva, in closing. A huge thank you to everyone for coming. A huge thank you to all of our speakers. And a thanks in advance to Alice Young, a great niece of William Cooper, who will be sharing a wonderful dance, the Nagara Bara Fera, a Yorta Yorta gospel song with an incredible link to Exodus 15 from the Hebrew Bible. She'll be doing that in the next section of the event that now moves to recreate the walk that William Cooper did back on the 6th of December 1938. And we're going to walk now, for those that are able to, for those that are comfortable to. We're going to do a symbolic walk to honour William Cooper. We're going to stand behind our faith leaders and our First Nations brothers and sisters who will be presenting the statement of unity that has been beautifully written with everyone's input and crafted by Barbara Miller from the Indigenous Friends of Israel, who's in Canberra right now. But we're going to be presenting it to a Victorian government representative who's expecting us and waiting for us on the steps of Parliament House, and Nick Stakos, MP, who's the Parliamentary Secretary for Multicultural Affairs and the member for Bentley. So as we go, we do have the protections, security, police around, but let's be careful, let's be respectful, let's be safe. There's no need to return to the synagogue. Those that want to take all their things with them can, but there will be some returning to the synagogue as well, so each to their own. Thank you again for coming. We're right on track for our midday arrival at the Parliament House steps. If everyone can please be upstanding